I really love the adventure of going someplace and trying something that I'm not going to get anywhere else.
Right.
I mean, that's really exciting to me. And maybe some people, they like what they like, but I like that sense of adventure and seeing if, hey, they got a distillery here. Wonder if they got anything good. I mean, there's a lot of excitement to that. I really like that.
Yeah, and that's part of it, right? I mean,
right.
There's nothing wrong with always drinking the same spirit because you know what it's going to be like.
Right.
But if you're an adventurous drinker and you like to expand your palate, and you like to grow it, and you like to experience a lot of different things, going into craft spirits and craft whiskey, you can find all sorts of things.
Beautiful. All right. Well, hey there, Cedar Rapids. How you doing? I'm Tim Nash with Skogman Realty. Welcome to Lunch with Friends, but I guess today it's Whiskey with Friends.
Indeed.
So, yep. So I'm hanging out here at Cedar Ridge Distillery and Winery. I'm with Jeff Zahrt. Jeff is a podcast host and YouTube series host as well, right?
Yep. YouTube.
And his show is Great American Whiskey Cookers. So we're going to talk a little about that, but one thing I just wanted to mention real quick was we are hanging out here at Cedar Ridge Winery and Distillery, and just being from Cedar Rapids, it's kind of one of those things where you don't realize how lucky you are sometimes. Cedar Ridge Winery has been here for, it's over 15,
17 years. Yeah, it's been here a long time.
And how long have they been distilling spirits?
A little over 10 years, I believe.
Yeah. And so, and the amazing thing, and we're going to talk whiskey with Jeff, but I think one thing that I've heard Jeff speak before, and one of the things that I know he likes to highlight, and that I like to highlight, is here at Cedar Ridge, they distill their Cedar Ridge bourbon, and the unique thing about that, and we're going to go into how there's lots of local distilleries throughout this nation, but the coolest thing about Cedar Ridge is that throughout the entire United States, if you look at the number one whiskey bourbon that's sold in those states, they're all the big ones. They're the Maker's Marks, the Jim Beams, etc. Jack Daniels.
Jim and Jack, those are the two biggies.
Jim and Jack. Here in Iowa, the number one sold whiskey is Cedar Ridge bourbon. They beat out all the big ones.
Which is uncommon. It doesn't happen across the United States.
Right, exactly. So, and also, I mean, they've got fantastic wines. They distill all kinds of spirits. You can kind of see their showcase here of all of the whiskeys and bourbons that they make, and they also do clear spirits. They do a lot of other stuff. So, if you live in Cedar Rapids and you haven't checked out Cedar Ridge Winery and Distillery yet, you're really missing out. They have a great venue here. They do a fantastic brunch. They have live music here. It's gorgeous. It's out just south of Cedar Rapids. You take the Swisher exit. Come on out, have a drink, have a meal, spend some good time with friends at Cedar Ridge. I've plugged Cedar Ridge to the best of my ability, but they are awesome. They are fantastic, and they're really, like I said, they're a local treasure here in Cedar Rapids. So let's get on and talk about Jeff.
Yeah.
All right. So Jeff's got some whiskey set up for us here today because I think what, I'll let you talk in a minute, I promise. What I think you're trying to do through your podcast and through your series is to help people appreciate whiskeys, bourbons, especially like craft.
Right.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit just about kind of the idea and what you set out to do when you got this project started?
Yeah. So I'm a whiskey nut, whiskey geek not by trade necessarily, but I love whiskey, right? And so I drink a lot of it, and I have a lot of the big brands, whether it be Maker's Mark or Jim Beam or Jack Daniels, you name it, and you can find it all over the place. And inevitably, I'd be sitting in a store or standing in a store deciding what to buy, and I always gravitate towards the craft whiskey because the flavor profile is vastly different than what you find in a Maker's or a Buffalo Trace. Nothing wrong with those, and I drink plenty of them, and I have a lot of it, but the flavor profile is always the same. And so I would be standing in a store, and inevitably somebody would be looking along the same lines, and they would pass by some fantastic craft distillers, fantastic craft whiskey. And a lot of times, they'd pass by Cedar Ridge. It's hard to be a hero in your own backyard. Yeah. Right?
Right.
So, and they would spend 60, 70, 80 bucks on a whiskey that I know is just, it's an okay whiskey, Whereas you can spend half that and get a phenomenal whiskey with the flavor profile that is absolutely out of this world. And you can find all sorts of different flavor profiles in whiskey. And one of the neatest things about it is your flavor palette, what you're going to pick up, is probably going to be different than what my flavor palette is.
I'm sure.
I drink a lot more than you do. I probably drink a lot higher proof than you do on a regular basis. So what you're going to pick up is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But so the whole impetus of the show came about of so let me back up. In 2000, there was roughly 200 craft distillers in the United States, and that's the entire United States, right? It includes Alaska and Hawaii. In 2020, that number had ballooned to over 2,000 craft distillers across the United States.
Similar story to what we've seen with craft beer and things like that.
Same exact, and it just keeps going up, right? And now we're almost approaching, there's close to 3,000 craft distillers. Wow. So you can travel all over the United States and you'll find craft distilleries and the whiskeys that are distributed either just in that city or in that region or in that state, but nowhere else. A lot of whiskey geeks, they will hunt and they will look for those unicorns. We were talking about this earlier, right? I have a couple of unicorns. I've got a Weller Orange Label single barrel that is a unicorn. It goes on the market for $750. That's what it sells for. But to find it is almost impossible. Well, to find some of these craft distillers is just as impossible because they're only distributed in that locale, whether it be Minnesota, it'd be Ohio, it'd be Illinois, Montana, whatever that happens to be. They don't have the distribution resources. They don't have the marketing dollars to be able to get out and go to all of the different states. And every state is different. In order to be distributed in the state of Iowa, you have to meet certain requirements. And those are different than the state of Illinois, the state of Montana, the state of Florida, California, you name it. All 50 states have all different rules.
Wow.
So it's difficult for some craft distillers to really expand their reach.
Right.
And they're making some phenomenal stuff. And the other part about a craft distiller is if they want to do something, you know what, let's finish this in a port barrel. Let's finish this in a sherry butt. Let's finish this way. And let's double it and put it in this barrel. They can do that, whereas somebody like a Maker's Mark, they don't get that option because everybody in the world is drinking Maker's Mark.
The stakes are higher.
The stakes are much higher.
Yeah.
They have a much bigger audience with a flavor profile that they have to stay true to so that their customers, because that way they always know what they're going to get. Right?
Yeah. So two things just before I forget. One, that Weller Orange Label that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Just a teaser for y'all. So he's going to put that Weller up against a big name whiskey, and that's an episode of Great American Whiskey Cookers that's going to be coming up on Friday, right?
Friday the 28th.
Friday. Yeah. So there's a teaser for you guys. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in hearing about, Friday, Great American Whiskey Cookers will be dropping a new episode. And the other thing that I just wanted to kind of touch on real quick is since the craft, let's call it the craft alcohol boom has happened. I really love the adventure of going someplace and trying something that I'm not going to get anywhere else.
Right.
I mean, that's really exciting to me. And you know, maybe some people, you know, they like what they like, but I like that sense of adventure and seeing if, hey, they got a distillery here. Wonder if they got anything good. I mean, there's a lot of excitement to that. I really like that.
Yeah, and that's part of it, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with always drinking the same spirit because you know what it's going to be like.
Right.
But if you're an adventurous drinker and you like to expand your palate, and you like to grow it, and you like to experience a lot of different things, going into craft spirits and craft whiskey, you can find all sorts of things.
Sure.
I mean, just amazing flavors across, because they're doing a number of different things. One of my favorite distilleries is out of Michigan. And you've probably drank the beer. Matter of fact, your viewers have probably drank the beer. It's New Holland beer.
Okay.
You've heard of New Holland?
Of course.
It's a brewery. It's in it's in Holland, Michigan, but they also make whiskey.
Cool.
And they take the whiskey, they distill it, they make it, and then after a couple of years, they dump it from one barrel and they dump it into their beer barrel.
I knew you were going to say that.
Beer,
yep, I knew you were going to say that.
And they leave it in there for like 9 months, and then they bottle it.
Is that a completely, like, totally unique?
Off the charts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got this beer, yeasty, whiskey, vanilla, bready compound to it, and it's totally different than you'll find on all the big bourbons.
And you could go to the big brands and you could talk to the top people that work and to make those, and they could say, well, it's a, this is an art, and you'd say, okay, sure. But when you get down to this level where they're really doing creative things like that, that's where you can really say it truly is an art.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And Murphy Quint, the master distiller here at Cedar Ridge, is doing some phenomenal things. He's got, back in his barrel shed, I think it's barrel shed number 9, he has barrels from Spain and Portugal. I mean, he's bringing in barrels from all over the place, and he's putting his whiskeys, whether it be a bourbon or it be his single malt that he's making, and we're going to taste one of his single malts. He's putting them into these unique barrels and finishing them that way. So you get these layered profiles, and they have the opportunity to be able to do that, whereas a big bourbon just doesn't get that opportunity because they have a much larger audience, right?
Sure.
They have to stay within the flavor profile. So it's really exposing people to a craft distillery that they would probably pass in a store and not give a second chance to, and exposing that palate and opening them up to that, right?
Sure.
Craft distillers, the Maker's Mark, Jim Beam's, Buffalo Traces, they're all great, but they don't need the marketing money. They don't need you to buy their bottle.
Right.
They have enough people buying it.
Yeah.
The craft distillers, they need you to buy it. Yes, it might cost $5, $10, $20 more, but they're not buying it at the same volume, and they don't get the breaks.
And if you discover something really cool and you have somebody coming in from out of town, I remember my father-in-law, my brother-in-law's father. We were spending Christmas with them one year, and Cedar Ridge had been out for maybe like 5 years. Yeah. Yeah. But I knew it was considered a pretty good bottle of bourbon, and I'd tried it before, and so I got him a bottle, and he was a bourbon guy. That was his thing, right? And we gave it to him, and he tried it, and he was supremely impressed. That's a really good, like, he was almost like surprised at how good it was. Yeah. And it's so much fun to like introduce somebody to something like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we found great whiskey in Illinois and craft distillers in Kentucky, Missouri, Minnesota, Colorado. I mean, they're all over the place. So
very cool.
Bourbon is one of these spirits. It's protected by law.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay? I believe it's 1964, Congress passed a law that made bourbon a unique spirit of the United States. It can only be made in the United States.
Sure.
Much like Scotch can only be made in Scotland.
Yep.
Champagne can only come from Champagne, France. Bourbon can only come from the United States.
Okay, so it doesn't have to come from Kentucky.
No, it does not have to come from Kentucky.
Okay, I thought that was a law.
Nope, that's a myth. There's a lot of people that think that it can only come from Kentucky, and that's not the case. It's a unique spirit of the United States of America, which means it can even come from Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Because it's a property of the United States, right? But it can come from Hawaii, it can come from Alaska, Montana, Louisiana, Maine, you name it. As long as it's United States, it can be bourbon. Now, there's some other requirements that have to be met in making the whiskey and making bourbon. But this is where the adage comes in. All bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So you can get whiskey from anywhere in the world. Yeah. But you can only get bourbon from the United States.
Okay.
That's why
very cool.
Here in Iowa, Swisher, Iowa, we have the #1 selling bourbon in the state of Iowa. Yes. Made here at Swisher.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, let's try some here now. My whiskey experience is such that I'm somebody that I enjoy it to some extent, but I definitely do not have a very educated palate.
Fair enough.
So
okay, so we're going to start on the left-hand side. So this is what we're going. This is what we're going to start with.
All right.
And I'll show you how to nose it.
Okay.
So whiskey, bourbon, is going to have a higher proof. So it's not like wine where you want to jam your nose into it because you'll burn your nostrils. Sure. Right? So you're going to bring it to your nose easy, and you're going to go to both sides. Okay. Because each side of your nose will actually pick up different flavors. Okay. And when you do it, you're going to open your mouth just a little bit, which opens up the olfactory nodes. Okay, so I'll demonstrate it for you. It looks silly. I'm just going to say it looks silly, but this is how you do it.
Okay. Okay.
So bring it up to your nose nice and easy, and inhale nice and easy. What flavors are you getting? Anything? Let's start with this.
Yeah, sure.
Do you like it or not? Do you like the nose?
I do like it. It doesn't give me like a.
Okay. So what are you picking up? any flavors coming to your mind. And whatever flavors you got are uniquely important to you, and they're perfectly fine.
Well, I don't think I could give you like a specific flavor, but I gave it like sweet.
Yep.
So it's sweet.
And bourbon is naturally going to be sweet because it's got a high content of corn. By law, in order for something to be bourbon, it has to be 51% corn.
Okay.
A minimum of 51% corn.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So since this is the first time we're having it, and we don't have any whiskey in our mouth yet, before you put it in your mouth, you're going to bring it up to your lips and let it just touch your lips so that you can get the alcohol onto your lips and onto your mouth.
Okay.
And your taste buds can kind of get that flavor for it. So just real lightly, it's going to touch your lips.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm not even going to bring it into my mouth because it's higher proof. Now we're drinking, this is their flagship bourbon. So this is 86 proof. When they first came out with their whiskey, they came out with it at 80 proof, and they've since upped it to 86 proof.
Okay.
And the reason for that, and talking with Murphy, the master distiller, is more and more drinkers are looking for a little bit more higher proof, but you can always proof it down. You can add a drop or two of water, which is perfectly fine. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't add water or Coke or Sprite to your whiskey. Drink it how you like it.
This was the thing about when I first heard Jeff talk. I really liked how he said that. He was like, "Don't be ashamed."
Yeah, don't be ashamed ever. Okay, so we're going to put it in our mouth.
Okay.
We're going to move it around in our mouth a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, and then we're going to swallow it down, and you'll get flavors on the very front of your palate, and then you'll start to feel and sense the flavors on the finish, which is called the back palate.
Okay.
And you're going to take a small drink.
Small drink.
And smooth is a perfectly acceptable term. So what are you getting? Do you like
Smooth.
it?
I do like it.
Okay.
And I've had the Cedar Ridge flagship before.
I always start with, do I like it or do I not like it? Because that's what governs my description of the whiskey.
Sure.
Okay.
I feel like it coats everything really well.
That's called a good mouthfeel.
Which is something I've always kind of appreciated. If it doesn't do that, then I've never really appreciated the whiskey very much. Maybe some kind of a fruity something or other in there,
like
a little
cherry?
bit. Yeah, like a cherry. And then sometimes I hear, and not with this one though, like maybe some vanilla, maybe a little bit, or a caramel.
Yep.
Yeah.
So common flavors in bourbon on the bourbon flavor wheel, and there's actually a bourbon flavor wheel, and it can get quite involved. Caramel, vanilla, and oak.
Okay.
Okay, and that's predominantly what you're picking up here on this, is that vanilla's coming through.
Okay.
It's kind of this light vanilla, right? And there's like a very light caramel on the very back end of it. And then that oak, and it's a tannin is what it is. And it can be a little dry at times.
Sure.
Which is pretty common.
Yeah.
Because it's sitting in the barrel for a couple, 2, 3, 4 years. I think their minimum age, I believe, is 3 or 4 years. I can't remember off the top of my head. But those are all really common flavors that you get in bourbon. Now, I'm picking up like a cherry, almost like a cream soda, like a cherry and a cream soda, or like a cherry Coca-Cola.
Sure, and I like that. I've had a Calumet, and that's like, for me, I don't like it at all, and it's like cherry cough medicine.
Yep.
Which is what I didn't like about it.
Yeah, and that's one of the fun things about whiskey, right?
Right.
That's what you're picking up, where somebody else, they might really pick up, they might love that flavor, right? Again, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
You drink what you like, right? And drink it how you like it. If you like to mix it with Coke, mix it with Coke.
Sure.
Nothing wrong with that. All right, so that's their flagship.
Okay.
So now we're going to move up just a little bit. And I want you, you still have some left, so because we're going to come back to it. So you're going to take the middle one. And this one here is their bottled and bond. Now, in order to be bottled and bond, it has to be a minimum of 4 years old.
Okay.
It has to be made at one distillery, so it can't be a blend. And it has to be made in the same season. Okay. And then it has to be proofed at 100 proof.
Okay.
So what we had before was 86 proof.
Okay.
This is 100 proof. Not 101, not 99, 100 proof.
Gotcha.
And this was a law that was passed. Matter of fact, a little fun story about this. The very first Food Safety and Drug Act is the Bottled and Bond Act.
Wow. Okay.
It was passed. I can't remember the president. I want to say it's Taft, but I'm not exactly sure on that. But that was done on purpose to ensure that people who are drinking it, they know what they're getting. Because at the time, people were doing all sorts of funky stuff with whiskey. They were putting tobacco spit and arsenic. I mean, they were putting all sorts of stuff in whiskey. And so they passed this act to say, look, if it says bottled in bond, and it was
Mhm.
governed by the government at the time, so all the distilleries would actually have a revenue agent on site
Wow.
who inspected everything, and they held the keys to the rick houses. Now, that's not the case. That
Sure.
doesn't happen any longer.
Sure.
But you still have to meet certain requirements. So this is 100 proof.
Okay.
So it's going to have a bigger, bolder flavor profile.
Okay.
Same
Okay.
process. You're going to take
Okay.
it to the nose. What do you like on the nose? Do you like it?
I did. I liked it like initially. Again, it feels like more.
It is
more
it is
of
more.
what I was smelling.
Yep. Yep. It's got a heavier caramel for me. And a
No,
heavier vanilla.
I just picked up the caramel was what I was gonna. I was like, I was coming back around. I was like, oh, and the caramel popped up for me.
Right.
Maybe not the vanilla as much, but
Yep.
yeah.
And I'm picking up almost a little bit of dark chocolate, like a dark chocolate covered cherry. It's a bigger profile. It's higher proof. So generally speaking, the higher the proof you go, the bigger the flavor profile is going to be. Right.
So the more like you're gonna get, like the more you can kind
usually, but not everybody. For some people, the higher the proof is, it just gets to be too proofy.
Sure.
And it's just too much.
Right.
Right. So let's try it.
Okay.
What do you think? It's going to be proofier.
I mean, like, as I kind of breathe out, I get more of the burn.
Yep.
But I would say going down, still smooth.
Yeah.
Still smooth. I did get, again, like you said, bigger. Like I felt like it filled up my olfactory senses more. Like as much as I felt like this one, I really got that good mouthfeel. You said this like almost went up into my nose.
Yeah.
But not in a bad way. Not in a bad way.
So this is more, so it's got a fuller mouthfeel. This is more oily.
Okay.
That's that creaminess.
Yeah.
And what that does is it coats the taste buds. And it kind of softens some of the burn on that, right? And that gives you some of that creaminess to it, and some of the bigger and the fuller mouthfeel to it. Now, what do you get on the finish? Is it sticking around longer?
Yes. Yep.
And that's pretty common for a higher proof.
I would still say kind of the same things. I got the chocolate after you like introduced it. But once you introduced it, I was like, oh yeah. Nope, that's kind of what I wanted to kind of put my finger on.
Right.
So I did catch that, yeah.
So here's the other part. Are you getting this kind of warm on the inside, this kind of
Right
nice,
here. Right here.
That's called a Kentucky hug.
Yeah.
That's what that's called. Is that nice warm kind of squeezing on the inside, and your insides are going, ooh, this is, that's called a Kentucky hug.
That's nice.
That's what that is.
No, I mean, I think that, and for folks, I think anyone that's really tried whiskeys at all, you know, I think you hear 100 proof and you're going to be like, oh geez, this is going to destroy me, you know? And it really, I mean, it didn't, like I said, it's still smooth. It was a bigger experience.
Yes.
But still smooth.
Very smooth.
Yeah.
Right. So take a drink of water, because the next one we're going to go to. So I have a business partner, Kirk. And when we first started this, he would drink, 80, 86, 88, nothing more than about 90 proof.
Okay.
And I'd put something down in front of him of 100, 110, 115 proof. He's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way I'm drinking that.
Yeah.
Well, now he's drinking 100 to 110, 115 proof.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Just because you get used to drinking certain things. And you're looking for a bigger, bolder profile.
Sure.
Right? The 80, 86, 88 proofs are going to have a more narrow profile. You're probably only going to pick up 3, 4, 5 flavor notes.
Okay.
Whereas the higher up in proof you go, you're going to find the flavors are all over the place, and you might get a ton of them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very cool. I mean, I think that it is more complicated to. There's always the person that's going to tell you, oh, you're getting notes of cherry, you're getting notes of vanilla, you're getting notes of caramel, and then there's the people that just don't really drink it. They try to, and they're like, I don't get it, I don't understand, I'm not getting any of that.
Right.
I think the most that like some people would say is like, oh, I got a sweetness,
Yep.
But as you educate your palate more, you're going to pick those up.
Yeah, and a large part of it, it's just like drinking wine. It's developing the language for describing what it is. And however you describe it, there's nothing wrong with how you describe it versus how I describe it.
Sure.
I've been drinking it a lot longer. I take notes on all my whiskey. So I have probably a bigger language profile in describing the whiskey than someone who's just getting into it. But just because your language profile isn't the same as mine, it does not matter. And that's why I always start with, do I like it or do I not like it?
Right.
Because that's what's going to drive the language that I use to describe it. Right.
Yep. I tried to. I was down in Tennessee, and I tried to do some local distillery, like Tennessee whiskey, you know, and that would be your Jack Daniels, but like, I don't like Tennessee whiskey. It's something that I just don't like. Now, I mean, I can say I like bourbon, Scotch, Irish, but I know I don't like Tennessee whiskey.
Yeah, and so Tennessee whiskey's a little bit different.
Yeah.
In order to be called a Tennessee whiskey, I believe they have to use the Lincoln County process, which is the process that was invented by Jack Daniels, and it's filtered through charcoal maple. Is how they do it, and they do it all on site. It's really kind of cool to watch how they do all that. But a Tennessee whiskey is a little bit different. Now, so here's the kind of funny thing about this, right? Jack Daniels, if you look at the bottle here in the United States, it says Tennessee whiskey. If you go overseas, it'll say bourbon. Oh. Because technically, it's a bourbon. Huh. And interesting. You might have some viewers that disagree with that. Yeah. But if you look at how it's made, all they're doing is they're doing another additive process. They're not adding anything. You can't add anything to bourbon to make it bourbon. You can't add caramel flavoring. You can't add coloring. You can't add anything to it. What they're doing is they're just filtering it. It's no different than cold filtering a bourbon before they bottle it. They're filtering it through charcoal maple. Gotcha. So technically, Jack Daniels is a bourbon. Whether you like it or not. Very cool. It is. Very cool. And they use the word bourbon overseas for marketing. Sure. Because everybody wants bourbon. Right. Right? That makes sense. Okay, so you had a glass of water, a drink? Yes, I had a drink of water. So this next one we're going to do is their quintessential. So this is their flagship quintessential. This is an American single malt. In January of this year, actually in December, Congress finally passed a law that identified American single malt as a unique category. And it went into effect, I want to say January 19th. I think it was a Sunday. So this is now a unique classification of what an American single malt is. Murphy Quint here is making some absolutely out of this world. This is my favorite. Yeah, I've had the quintessential. It's so good. Yeah. So, and it's, you know, and there's, so some people say, if I want to drink Scotch, why would I drink an American single malt? Well, there are American single malt distillers that aren't using peat. Okay. So it doesn't have that peaty smokiness. Right. Right. But this is their flagship quintessential that Murphy Quint's making, which is absolutely divine. Yeah. No, What are you getting on the nose? Do you like it? It's soft to me. It's got this really kind of soft, buttery, kind of cherry flavor to it. And there's just a hint of smoke coming through. Yeah, I catch that a little bit. I mean, it's interesting because it's it smells a lot like what I feel like we've been smelling. Yep. Yeah. So try this one, and then we're going to go back to the flagship. Okay. Okay. So try this one. Okay. What's the mouthfeel you get on this? Silkier or creamier than the other two. And this is 92 proof. This is lower proof than the 100 proof. Okay. Yeah, but it sits on my tongue more. I am getting like I said, kind of a creamier, not sweeter, smokier, which I think is what I kind of dig about the single malt and the Scotches. I like the smokiness, but yeah, I mean that's kind of. And what I'm getting. This is made with malted barley. Okay. Single grain, single malt, single distillery, in a single season. And that's what this is. Whereas with bourbon, you've got corn plus could be rye, could be malted barley, could be any other grains. They can put in whatever other flavoring grains they want to put into it. But a single malt is one grain. Okay. But again, it has to be made at one distillery in a single season. And there's a couple other rules, restrictions. So, but this is an American single malt. Yeah. It's not overly peaty. It's not overly scotchy, right? But it's got this. It does have the profile of it though that I feel like it definitely has that. It does. Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I pick up, which is really kind of odd on this. I pick up like this on the back palate. I get this really light orange rind. Okay. Almost like an old fashioned. Sure. You know what I mean? Sure. So it's really kind of fun. Now let's have some fun and let's go back to the 86.
Okay.
Let's go back to this one.
Go back to the 86.
And you'll notice a difference.
Okay.
Now, proof-wise, they're only 6 proof points different.
This smells harsher.
It's going to have a different smell to it. I'm curious as to what you think on the taste.
Okay. It's less. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. Especially if that's how you describe it. It makes perfect sense.
It's less. It doesn't, I feel like before, because I got it with this one. I got it more with this one.
Yep.
But I got it with this one too, where I felt like it fell down my tongue and kind of coated the whole thing. This time, there's like a path. There's a path of flavor.
It's thinner.
Going straight back. Yeah, it's thinner.
It's more watery.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Whereas the single malt has got a thicker feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a fuller feel to it.
Yeah.
It's more creamy, more velvety.
I still feel like this one was the one that really like filled up everything though. Yeah.
Bottled in bond, 100 proof. My wheelhouse, the whiskeys that I kind of gravitate towards are range anywhere from that 100 to 120 proof.
Okay.
And about 110, right around that area is like right in my wheelhouse.
Huh.
But the really nice thing about 100 proof is you always know it's 100 proof. And so it's meeting certain requirements, and it's going to have a body flavor to it that you know is going to be there. Whereas you don't always get that in an 80 or an 86 or an 84 proof whiskey.
Okay.
Right? But to get into whiskey, to start with, an 86 or an 80 proof whiskey is great to get into.
Right.
Or a finished whiskey is really good to get into. Because a finished whiskey, you take, and Cedar Ridge they have a port side. That's strangely enough, not strange, but it's really cool. They finish it in their own port barrels. So they're not sourcing port barrels from somewhere else. Yep. They're using their port barrels that held their port wine.
Because don't forget, folks, they're a winery too.
Yeah, right. And not all distilleries can do that.
Yeah.
So they're finishing them for a certain length of time in their own port wine. So you get this kind of thick, heavy dark cherry influence from the port wine that's on the whiskey. And you get the whiskey flavor of the corn. And they're just way too much fun.
I love how excited he gets about, how passionate you get when you talk about it. And it's one of those things where you hear about it and you want to, it is exciting. I mean, I'm sure it's not the cheapest hobby in the world.
It isn't.
But
that's the thing is a lot of whiskey hunters they'll look for those unicorns. And matter of fact, there's a whiskey that just came out, Woodford Double Oaked.
Okay.
I won't go into the entire
I know
lineage
who
of
Woodford is. That's about it. Yeah.
And it starts at $200.
Wow.
Just for the bottle. And it's a 700 milliliter bottle versus a 750, which is what is mostly used.
Okay.
So it's less content, right?
Right.
But it's 200. It starts at 200. That's if you can find it at 200.
Wow.
Most retailers are marking them up to 250, 300, 350.
Because why not? Why wouldn't you, right?
Right. Why wouldn't you, right?
Right.
But you can find whiskey, especially in this 100 proof range. We just did a taste test of some whiskeys, and one of them was a sub $20 whiskey.
Wow.
Up against a whiskey that was several $100s, and the sub $20 whiskey won.
Yeah.
And so you
sometimes
have to spend a ton of money to find a really good whiskey. And I think their bottle and bond runs like $40-$45.
Yep. Wow.
Why would you not pick it up?
I mean, yeah, no. So I think this has been amazing, and I think we got some whiskeys to finish up. But
we do.
We're gonna leave you guys. And Jeff Zahrt, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And oh darn, I was just gonna throw. I wanted to mention. So I looked into some of their podcasts, and the thing I actually like about your podcast is actually they aren't too long.
No, we try to keep them short on purpose.
So if you're doing your weekly commute and you want to listen to a fun, face-off between two whiskeys, or you want to listen to Jeff and his partner visit a distillery, a small batch distillery, those are about 15 minutes long. So you can listen to it during your commute to work. So check out Great American
Whiskey
Cookers. Check out Great American Whiskey Cookers. You can find them on anywhere where you find your podcasts. You can also find them on YouTube.
Yep.
And then please come check out Cedar Ridge Winery Distillery. They do have something for everybody, so come check it out. I'm Tim Nash with Skogman Realty. Again, Jeff Zahrt with Great American Whiskey Cookers. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Cool.